What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? Thank you all so much for joining in here with us for an exciting episode here as we are breaking down the ECU NC State football game. That's right, the first game of the year, getting things rocking and rolling here in 2022. And for this episode, as you might see, there's a lot of red here, but there is one little bit of shade of purple here that we got to figure out who this is, but we'll go ahead and give it. We'll go ahead and just ruin the surprise for you. So this is Jared here from the Boneyard Podcast. Again, does great stuff covering the East Carolina University Pirates. Right? I think that's the name of it, right, Jared?
Yeah, that's the name. That's the name of it. East Carolina University, ECU.
Yeah,
covering the Pirates.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, again, appreciate you, Jared, again for giving us the opportunity here to break it down a little bit, let our viewers, let our fans kind of learn a little bit in terms of what they're going to be seeing here on September 3rd, which again, I think that we all can agree cannot get here any slower, but I mean, it is, we hope it can speed up a little bit here and get to it. But I will go and start off with that. The weather as of this recording, which again is August 24th, doesn't look too shabby, because I know that a couple months ago I think all of us would have said, oh my gosh, a noon game on September 3rd, we are going to be baking, but it doesn't look too bad right now. So hopefully we can keep that juju rolling. So,
yeah, I mean, in Greenville, I mean, anytime it's going to be 84, you're going to have the humidity. I mean, if you've ever spent time in Greenville or it's kind of like Fayetteville, where it's just kind of got that humidity in it, and it's going to be hotter than I think the forecast was showing like 84 last time I looked.
Yep.
But yeah, it's way too early to even be thinking about that.
Yep. Yeah. No. Well, it's just kind of like that shimmer of hope, because to me, I'd rather feel like I'm in a swimming pool than be absolutely baking. So, but again, it depends, on who you talk to really when it comes to that. So Jared, kind of talking a little bit here. So obviously ECU football. So we were kind of talking a little bit, here beforehand, and you were saying that there's definitely some high expectations for this season. Obviously led by your quarterback, Holton Ahlers, that, for those who don't know, when Holton made his decision, it was between ECU and NC State. But let's be real. We all knew he was going to go to ECU, especially with his father being the PA announcer for the Pirates, him being from the area. It's like, yeah, and him having the opportunity to be the hometown hero, it's there. And then we already had Devin Leary, who Holton Ahlers is going to be going against as well. So it just made too much sense for him to go to ECU. So definitely no shocker there. But, kind of talk a little bit in terms of what makes you feel like there's such high expectations for this season, and how important is it, would you say, for Mike Houston's career or era per se, that he performs well this season?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, the last 2 years, I mean, if you take out the COVID year, or if you really dissect the COVID year, there was a lot of games in that year where the Pirates were very competitive in a lot of those games. One of those games we lost. We lost several guys due to COVID during that season. Like, we had to shut down several times, just like most teams in the country. But I mean, there was a game where I think it was Navy or Tulane. I believe it was Navy. Right before the game, there was rumors that Holton Ahlers wasn't going to play because he had COVID, and literally, we confirmed and broke the news probably about 45 minutes before kickoff that Holton Ahlers was not playing in that game, and ECU ended up losing by a touchdown, right? And there were so many games where they were just so close, even in the COVID year. They ended up going 3-6 that year. Just still wasn't a very good season. Well, last year they ended up 7-5 in the regular season, and there was really only 2 games that were not really close. It was the App State game, week 1 in Charlotte in Bank of America, and then the last game against eventual college football playoff member Cincinnati. And I mean, those games were still very close during the first half, but those teams just kind of pulled away in the second half. Other than that, every game last year for the Pirates decided by a touchdown or less. I mean, you're talking week 2, you have South Carolina on the ropes. They come storming back in the third and fourth quarter in the second half. They come back, win the game on a game-winning field goal at the last second. I mean, you go into Marshall, you're down big, you come back, you win that game in the fourth quarter after making a 20-point comeback. I mean, you had so many times where this team could have really just shipped it in, and we said, okay, this is the same old as it has been for the last 7 years.
Yep.
But it wasn't that. Coach Houston has changed the mentality in this team. You look at a team like Houston, ECU took them to overtime in Houston. ECU was beating UCF last year in the fourth quarter and lost in the last 2 minutes of that game. And I mean, these are teams that ECU has now coming into their stadium and has an opportunity to show in front of a 51,000 packed stadium in Dowdy-Ficklin that, hey, like this atmosphere can compete with any, and the atmosphere can play a big role. They got a bunch of big games at home this year, and that's why I think the expectations are so high. Is because last year you almost beat so many of these teams, and if you didn't beat them, or if you didn't almost beat them, you beat them, and you've got this good opportunity this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and and kind of talking about, this year as well, obviously, right as of right now, Vegas has state favored in this game by, 10 to 11, depending on where you look, give or take. But I mean, I think all of us NC State fans, know that, I mean, the fact we haven't won at ECU since 2005, if I'm not mistaken, 2005, 2007, something like that. Obviously, like with the heartbreaker in 2010, where we lost in overtime with Russell Wilson, and et cetera. So, there's not a single 2007. It was okay, cool.
It was 2007.
So
2007.
Obviously, there's not a single state fan that's looking past TCU and knows that it's going to be a challenge. Obviously, even though that we feel that, just like you guys, that there's a lot of expectations for us this year to perform, that we know that even though we're 10, 11 point favorites, we're not overlooking ECU whatsoever, because we know it's going to be a tough environment in Greenville for sure. And I actually went to that South Carolina ECU game last year because my wife is a Gamecock, and it definitely kind of made me think back, going, man, a year from now I'm going to be back here in Greenville cheering for NC State versus ECU. So what's your kind of expectations about this game, in terms of I mean, are you like if you had to kind of give like a 1 to 10, because I'm sure that you probably think that ECU is going to win, but give me like a 1 to 10 in terms of how confident you are ECU is going to win.
Yeah, I would say on a 1 to 10 scale, I'm never. I don't want to say too high, but I would say probably. I feel they'll win. Just with all that's riding on this game, I think that it's a big game for both schools, both teams. I think that this, even though it's the first week of the season, there's so much hype around NC State, and rightfully so, that it could end up being a trap game for them. For the Wolfpack. And so that's why I put it at about 6.5, I would say. But I am confident. I am confident in our Pirates, and I've said it. I've said it multiple times on our podcast that I've called a win. And that maybe that's a homer take, but hey, I mean, I'm an ECU guy, so I gotta take that take.
Well, because go ahead, Hicken. Go ahead.
Hey, I want to say this one on. Mackenzie had us a very interesting record prediction for us going through this season. So I think we all had pretty high records too for NC State. I think
no shot.
State going on.
No shot.
I think it was.
Me and my mom have been butting heads for the past.
Hey man, you never know. You never know.
So I know not.
Mom's a good lady.
No.
Yeah.
We're gonna see though.
Well, here what I'm curious about though is you're saying you feel pretty confident, and we've talked a little bit about Holt Nailers. If you want to expound on that, you can. But what gives you the confidence you feel like that? I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that, but what details can you give to point?
Look, I mean,
reasons
you've got two
I think ECU
talented
will win
quarterbacks. I mean, I think when you look at the quarterback position, Devin Leary, he's getting a lot of praise, and like I said, rightfully so. Holt Nailers, I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football going into this year. I mean, he draws a lot of comparisons to a guy like Tim Tebow. I mean, left-handed. He's kind of a dual threat quarterback. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. I think that's what he's listed at. So not only can he throw the ball, he can run the rock. I mean, I've seen him multiple times run over guys on the defensive line, just mowed right down and mow them down. So I would say that that's a wash. I think the reason I'm giving the edge is it's going to be a lit atmosphere like that. I think the atmosphere at both stadiums, really. I mean, if this game were being played at Carter Finley, I probably wouldn't feel as confident. But considering that it's being played in Dowdy Ficklin, you're going to have all those students and all those fans getting lubed up at 4 a.m. on Saturday. I think that's gonna do something for ECU, and I think when it comes to, I mean, y'all's defense is outstanding. That's my biggest fear is seeing y'all's defense just run right over our offensive line, and that's where ECU struggled over the past 3 or 4 years is at the offensive line. But they've really shored that up. That's the position group that needed the enhancements, and they got that. They've gotten bigger, they've gotten stronger, they've gotten more athletic. Brought in last year, they brought in a center from Carolina, Avery Jones. Then this past off season, brought in a offensive lineman from West Virginia, Parker Moore. I mean, these guys are big. They've got big game experience, and I mean, so do most of our skill players. I mean, our wide receivers, I would put our wide receivers up against anybody. And I think our running back duo maybe our running back duo is the best running back duo in the quote unquote group of 5. But I would say that they're one of the top running back duos that's not being really talked about in the country. Keaton Mitchell is, go ahead.
Well, yeah. Talk about Keaton Mitchell. I was going to say that because I saw he was like, I saw a ranking that put out with American Conference and essentially had Keaton Mitchell. I don't know if he's the best running back but he was like the 4th best player considered in the conference overall. So can you talk about him? Give some background.
Mitchell, he's a junior.
Don't really know anything about him.
His 3rd season. With all the COVID years, I don't know. I guess you still are considered a junior, but he's last year he was probably number 2 on the depth chart. This guy is maybe the fastest guy I've seen in college football. Just if he gets to the second level, he's going to be gone. If he gets to that second level, you better watch out. And then you got Rajay Harris, who they're best friends. They've known each other since a very young age, even before high school. They're best friends. He's the number 2. He's kind of a bulkier back. He's going to be your short down back, right? If you need to get a 3rd and 1 conversion, he's going to be the guy you hand it to. But Keaton Mitchell, it's nothing for him to break off a 70-yard run and take it to the house, and everybody's chasing him. I mean, that man looks like he's being chased by dogs every single day.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flatlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flatlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flatlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flatlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out. Yeah. Well, because one thing, like, and again, awesome. This is just from, obviously stuff which I've noticed, but also two big factors is obviously, first of all, I was losing Tyler Snead for sure. I mean, that was Holton Naylor's main guy. That was the guy last year, when you talked about the wide receiver core, he was the highlight for sure. So losing him. And then one thing with Keaton Mitchell, which I wanted to kind of ask you about, is that, so I've heard this stat and I could be wrong, but I know it's generally in the right ballpark that roughly that a little bit less than 30% of his rushing attempts accounted for over 60% of his rushing yards, meaning that, he's a guy that, like, if he got one, he was gone. But
yeah,
so he was very kind of boom or bust kind of a deal, which, can come a lot from the fact that, I mean, he's, definitely, a smaller guy, but he's a very speed guy per se, so do you kind of come into the season thinking that, that we may see a different side to him where he's more balanced, or do you see more of that boom or bust kind of deal heading into this season? That's just kind of the kind of running back he is.
I mean, it's going to be running back by committee. Those two guys, it's not anything crazy to see Coach Houston, Coach Donnie Kirkpatrick, the offensive coordinator, throw out Rajay Harris on the first down, 1st and 10. If you see that, it's not going to shock me. They look at the different schemes and look at how the defense line is lined up and make that call. You'll see these guys substitute out for one another all game long. So if they see something that they like, they see a matchup they like, then they're going to put Keaton Mitchell out there. And like I said, if he gets to that second level, he's gone. Now that I would say, yeah, he is kind of a boomer bust, but he's still gonna get his yards. And he's 5'9", he's 181 pounds. So he is a smaller running back, but he's so shifty. Like I said, if he gets to the outside, he gets to the second level, it's game over for that play.
So I'm going to add this for State fans comparison. I just looked this up. He is right on the same build, height, weight-wise as Jordan Houston for the State fans. He just sounds like he's a little bit faster. I know Jordan Houston's probably going to be our starting running back for the season, Jared, but he's a guy who really has waited his turn, but he is kind of he's a 5'9", 180-pound running back who is known for being more of that shifty speed kind of guy. But he doesn't have the 1,100 yards that Keaton Mitchell had last season. So just to give State fans a relative comparison, what they're looking at stature-wise, it's like a Jordan Houston, but maybe has gotten
something
way more
about Keaton Mitchell. He came in as a freshman, and he and Rajay Harris, they were 3rd and 4th on the depth chart in the running back room, and by about week 8, they were the 1 and 2. They catapulted themselves into the 1 and 2 because they were able to succeed early on, and now that they have just another year under their belt, I think that they're gonna put up some gaudy numbers this year.
So let me ask you this question then. I want to ask how do ECU fans how do they feel about Mike Houston as a coach? Because every fan base has their own view of their own football coach or basketball coach or what have you. But Houston came from James Madison. My in-laws, they're graduates from James Madison. Watched a game there with Mike Houston when he was at JMU. Mike Houston is in 14-19, I think, at ECU heading into this season. But he just got his first winning season last year because y'all finished at 7-5, I think it was. So. Can you talk about that?
I think the fan base
fans have about Mike Houston?
There's been times where they questioned play calling, but really that was directed more at the one of the coordinators. But that turned around later on in the season last year. But when you look at it, Mike Houston came into ECU, and he talks about it in almost every press conference leading up to the season. He's talked about it extensively, that when he got here, there was, Scotty Montgomery was one of the worst coaches in college football that anybody could have ever hired. That whole situation was mishandled from the get-go. Ruffin McNeil, hey, shout out. Y'all got him.
We appreciate it.
Friend of the podcast.
And I said, how do y'all feel about that?
Friend of the podcast. We've had him on. Love Ruff.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Look, when that all happened, it was terrible. Like, that whole administration is gone. And now the new administration, they brought in Mike Houston. They've done a really good job about hiring coaches and extending coaches. Mike Houston earned an extension last year, so to keep him from going to the Power 5. The thing is he's had, under Scotty Montgomery, they weren't hitting in practice. This team was not physical at all. They were guys that would come out. Yeah, They weren't
hitting in practice. They weren't hitting in practice.
They would do hitting
weird.
Once every couple of weeks. They weren't physical at all. And this is a guy that he was a wide receiver coach, and then he lucked into an offensive coordinator job at Duke. Wasn't even calling the plays at Duke, and then got a head coaching job at ECU. I don't get it. Like that was like they were talking about bringing in Brady Hoke at one point before Scotty Montgomery, and I was like, yo,
Really?
like, do it. And that didn't happen. But Mike Houston has turned this program around. Like I said, he's added size, he's added that physicality. I mean, he has these guys playing with a mean streak. I mean, last year, that was one of the most physical teams I've seen. I haven't seen a team at ECU hit like that since probably the 2014 season. I mean, and that was the season, the 10-win season. So I mean, that's what I see. I see a lot of people like him. He's a much better recruiter than Scotty Montgomery. And I thought that was the only thing Scotty Montgomery had over Ruff. Was how good of a recruiter he was. He was getting high 3 stars and some low 4 stars at the time. But Mike Houston goes in and he's a guy that isn't afraid to take a guy and make him into a Pirate. And that's what I love about him. And ECU fans feel the same thing.
I love it.
I have a
Wow.
question about you saying the 6.5 or 6.5 of you being that confident. The environment, obviously, I've been to so many ECU games. The environment there is insane. It's kind of like state. But with how many state fans that are planning to make that trip, do you still think it's going to be a 90-10 environment, or do you think it's going to be more of a split in half environment?
I would say that it's probably going to be, I would say probably closer to 85-15, 75-25 split. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with that.
ECU has done a pretty good job of selling out tickets. I mean, I know the lower bowl completely sold out already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the lower bowl sold out last week.
Yeah, we're up.
They've the upper deck is still, there's still some seats there, but it's very, very scarce. Now look, when you go to these games, look, I've gone to plenty ECU, NC State, ECU Carolina games, and you see that, look, there's going to be state fans scattered out and throughout that crowd, but it's not going to be very, like, they're going to be in their one section over there, down on the end zone, and then you're going to have a couple scattered throughout the crowd. And I don't see it being that much of a factor, playing that much of a factor into the game. And look, Scotty Montgomery, as much shit. Sorry, can I say that on y'all's podcast? I don't know, but yeah, as much
you just did,
as I give him, like, I talk crap about Scotty Montgomery all the time. Hate Scotty Montgomery, worst college football coach that I've ever seen. Look, he had 9 wins in his career at ECU.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 against NC State at home.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
let's.
Oh, I would say that maybe one of Dave Doran's worst losses, probably. And I don't mean that negatively. Like you can't lose to ECU. I think state fans and ACC teams or any Power 5 teams in general look, okay, if you're playing a non-Power 5 team, you shouldn't lose to them. But everybody knew it was. I think that was Scotty Montgomery's second game of his career, and we lost. And I can remember him going up after the game and doing like this.
Yeah,
and I was this is so stupid.
Oh yeah, it was a tight game.
It
was a very tight game.
ECU, I think.
Yeah, that's what Scotty Montgomery was. That was his biggest win.
So
was beating State, and I mean that was the biggest thing for him. And I mean, then the next week he almost beat South Carolina at South Carolina. Had he won those first 3 games, had he won that game at South Carolina, I wonder if that would have been put him on a different trajectory here at ECU.
Yeah. Well, and we'll definitely have to take a pause right there, folks, as again, we'll definitely pick this conversation right back up where we left off here in part 2. But again, y'all, make sure, again, obviously a huge game going on here. And if you want to check out more of Jared and the Boneyard Podcast previews heading up to NC State game, make sure to check them out on Spotify and all the podcasts.
We're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Cool.
The premier podcast of Pirate Nation, y'all.
Hey, glad to have you on. So all right, y'all. Well, again, make sure if
There
you
you go.
haven't already, again, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, which is free to do, and to make sure you don't miss out whenever we release any new NC State content. Give this video a like as well if you're an NC State fan, to let us know that you are an NC State fan. And if you think NC State is going to beat ECU, hit that like button
Smash that
specifically.
button. Smash it.
And then
Smash
also
that
give us a follow at Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter and Instagram. But we'll see y'all for part 2. As always, go Pack, y'all.